Alors vous êtes tout à fait prêts, je suis sûre.
I'm sure you're all ready to move towards a mindful society, a caring society. Let's move that way and try and find the ways and means. I'll call on stage Aurélie Godefroy, who's going to join us. Hello, Aurélie. Aurélie is a colleague, a journalist. We're all seeking meaning and sense. She works on meaning, on spirituality. She's a journalist for Le Monde des Religions. Sensé Santé is another magazine she works for. This is a magazine I created in the Monde group a year ago, and I hope you can distribute these papers and magazines before the end of this conference. On France 2, Aurélie presents Sagesse Buddhiste every month. She also presents other programs. She's often invited to moderate meetings at the Grand Rex and in other places with American and French guests who talk about personal fulfillment. Today, she will host eminent guests who work in different areas, the economy, human rights, etc. The aim is always the same, to be more mindful, and we're going to try and find ways and means to get there all together. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. Meditation can be one way to move towards such a mindful society, to create greater cohesion in the world. I suggest we now welcome 4 guests. Amandine Roche is the first one, and I'm going to leave you. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Guibert del Marmol.
Guibert del Marmol.
Juste là. Gonzague de Blignières. Et Frédéric Lopez.
Amandine Roche, Guibert del Marmol, Gonzague de Blignières, and Frédéric Lopez. I do not know whether Marion Cotillard, our main speaker, is with us. She's with us. Here we go.
On rechange encore.
Oui, c'est un peu les chaises musicales.
It's musical chairs, but that makes it more lively and dynamic. Marion, thank you for joining us today again. You are a main actor, not just an actress, but a main actor in society today. That's very kind, says Marion. Before you tell us more about this topic, I would like you to tell us what you expect from this roundtable. What do you expect from this word? Mindfulness, caring, kindness, bienveillance in French. Well, it covers several things. I'm very pleased to be here with you. I'm pleased to be able to listen to the different artists and the different speakers who come and share their wisdom with us. It's very inspiring. I think that nowadays we need to be inspired by people like John Kabat-Zinn, by artists like Sylvie Guillem, the dancer, who may, through her dancing, give us a clue as to how to reach this excellency and discover how she discovered meditation. It's very inspiring. And then I'm eager to listen to all of you. I want to listen to what you have to say today. Well, let's say I'm in favor of being positive. That doesn't mean that all is wrong with the world, that we don't need any inspiration. We need people who want to change things, who want to work on this subject matter, and want to make things clearer because we're sometimes lost in the meanders of our world. Mindfulness, caring, kindness, that means we can also look at each other and at oneself without fear. We live in a fear-ridden world. A lot of people play on that fear. Sometimes it's easy to manipulate people who have such fears. It's important to have a positive energy, an inspiring energy, an energy that leads you along the way. Maybe there are people who are scared of this concept of caring and kindness, who are scared of going towards others. Well, at the end of the day, it's not that difficult. That's what I want to tell them. It can even be very enriching. It can bring a lot of inner peace to each one of us. Before we move to the topic that interests us, I would like to introduce the different speakers. First, we have Amandine Roche. For 20 years, she's been working for the United Nations. She's a human rights specialist. I believe that Amandine has gone to some 20 or so conflict areas all over the world. And I would like you to introduce yourself briefly. Could you tell us why you wanted to work in this humanitarian sector? What did you feel when you met His Holiness the Dalai Lama? Thank you. I was indeed lucky enough to meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama some 18 years ago. He came to give a lecture in my law faculty in Bordeaux. He was talking about human rights violation in Tibet, and he was talking about the non-violent resistance of Tibetans at the time. And when I heard him, it gave me an inspiration to become a human rights lawyer and work for the United Nations and possibly make sure the Dalai Lama could go back to Tibet. I ignored the Chinese right of veto at the time, but that gave me a direction, an inspiration. My political science PhD focused on that issue. I went to Dharamsala, interviewed His Holiness. He talked about the Pancham Lama, who was the youngest political prisoner in the world. And when I was 25, I joined the United Nations in Tajikistan. In 2000 and 2001 in Tajikistan, there was a flow of Afghan refugees who were fleeing the Taliban regime. I tried to help these Afghan refugees, and I fell in love with that people because of their resilience and their courage. And I stopped my work. I wanted to really meet that people. And as it happened, the Taliban invited me to Afghanistan. I went to Kabul on the 11th of September 2001. I was invited. The deputy minister of Taliban, when he saw my application, then said, "But you're an Afghan." And I said, "No, I'm French." "Yes, but your Christian name, your first name are Afghan." Amandine Roche. Aman means peace. Roche means religion. No, Deen means religion, and Roche joy. Therefore, your name means you are the happy guardian of peace. Allah send you to Afghanistan. You'll be our star guest. And I said, "Great." I was very impressed by Tibet, but the Afghan people fascinated me. George Bush then wanted to bomb Afghanistan. With my friend, we left the country and went back to Pakistan, where I was no longer a guest. Because Jacques Chirac wanted to bomb that part of the world, Afghanistan. Now, we were taken hostages, we were exchanged, and when we were exchanged, a small girl came up to me and said, "Please help me go to Pakistan." I couldn't adopt her, I couldn't help her. She came back in my dreams and asked me why I did not save her. I believe that the Dalai Lama had opened up my awareness, and this little unknown girl opened up my mind, and I better understood the cause of women in Afghanistan. I promised myself I would go back there, and I went there and worked there for 15 years. Thank you, Amandine. Now, the next guest is Guibert del Marmol. You work with entrepreneurs who change the world and reconcile the three words, economy, ecology, and meaning. That is a major challenge. Please tell us about it. You work on regenerative economy and conscious capitalism, as you call it. But first of all, I would like you to tell us more about the personal event that changed your life and your view of the world. It's complicated to follow in Amandine's steps and her interesting story. I was a young manager in a company, and I was diagnosed with a tumor on the pituitary gland. When you're 30 years old and you're successful in love and other entrepreneurish business, and people tell you, well, you have 3 months to live, there's a wake-up call. I spent some time trying to find the adequate therapy, the right hospital. At the end of the day, the doctors decided to operate on me, and the doctor came and said, well, good news, we've taken the tumor out, you can see again, but you've no longer got a pituitary gland, so this is what you have to take till the end of your life. Now, the pituitary gland controls the hormonal system. So like any woman after giving birth, you may have a baby blues, you will no longer be able to have children. Your lifespan will be limited to 15 years. And here's a list of 4 or 5 medications you'll have to take every day, some by injection. If not, you'll faint and fall in a coma in 36 hours. Now, this was my roadmap for the rest of my life on that day. And for different reasons, I must be very grateful to physicians, but I understood that medicine is not a precise science, it's an art. And I was lucky to have to deal with an endocrinologist who was very wise and who told me there's a very tight link between your medical condition and your mind. He said, you have emotions, you can't really manage them very well, you experience stress, you have negative emotions, bitterness, anger. You inject that poison into your body. And I realized it was exactly what I'd done during the previous year. When I left the hospital, I decided to change my lifestyle. I started practicing sport again. I started eating very differently. Now, I thought maybe I can go beyond what science tells me by regaining control over my emotions. So some 25 years ago, I started practicing meditation. It was breathing and visualization, not mindfulness at the time. And for medical reasons, this is what I practice on a daily basis, even today. And what the doctor said at the time didn't prove right. I'm 54 now. I'm in a much better condition now than when I was 30. Now, I had to rebuild my health, and I wanted to intellectually understand this link between the body and the mind. I'm not a scientist. I worked in the field of economy. I started reading a lot of books on endocrinology, Dr. Téranger's books, and I read a lot about cell genetics. I looked at quantum physics, etc. I made sure I met specialists who could make me more aware. I focused a lot on anthropology, on primary people, to try and see what could be done. And then one day I discussed with the assistant of a Nobel Prize. That person said, this professor reads Lao Tzu, the father of Taoism. And I understood that we have a lot in common. Then I tried to focus on awareness, mindfulness, consciousness. I am not a religious person. Like Spinoza, I live in the present time. I'm not dogmatic. For 10 years then, I read everything I could find. Pythagoras, Dalai Lama. I tried to understand the mystics, the Kabbalah, Sufism. etc. And I tried to meet masters and teachers. And all this work meant that at some point I found answers to my questions. Who is mankind? How does it come about? This changed my vision as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a manager. Some 15 years ago, I realized that the model according to which I was brought up was not true. In the business schools I attended, I was told that you have to maximize profitability, and I understood that was not true. You have to create abundance, but share that abundance. This is why I launched this permaculture and perma-economic area. You have to respect human being, you have to create abundance, but share it. And this is my view of the world today.
On va rester dans le domaine économique avec vous, Gonzague de Blignières.
Gonzague de Blignières, still in the area of economics. In 2013, you created a foundation called RAISE. And some months ago, in March this year, you launched a movement called Mouvement pour une économie bienveillante, a movement for a mindful economy with Clara Guibert. Your background is very diverse. Could you please introduce yourself? I seem to be the oldest here. I'm 62, much older than all of you. I'm going to bring us back on Earth. I'm an investor. Since 1981, I've been an old investor. I'm an old investor, as you can see. I worked on private investment. I invested in private companies for 40 years. I raised a lot of money in a lot of areas in the world to make as much money as possible, earn more and more, pay back our shareholders, etc. But then one day, some 20 years ago, I met André Mullier, the creator of Fil d'Art. He went into liquidation. Some 600 people were laid off. He had a burnout after that, and he said, I can't go on living and just look at my fellow human beings if I have to get rid of 600 employees and therefore make life difficult for so many families. He created a network that focuses on three important ideas. What matters most is mankind, what is free of charge, and reciprocity. The Réseau Entreprendre is the network he created some 20 or 30 years ago. He helps entrepreneurs creating jobs. André Mullier had only one word to say: bienveillance, mindfulness, kindness, caring. He used that word all the time, and I thought, we are actually creating two hemispheres. The right side with capitalism that grows more and more. Now, is it for the good of humankind or not? I'm not sure. And then a left hemisphere where you have NGOs, philanthropists, associations that grow as well, particularly with young people who are more and more attracted to these associations. But this hemisphere does only live according to the profits made by the other hemisphere. Now, for years, I helped different associations, business angels in different neighborhoods with Claude Bébéard, Marion Cotillard. I assisted Marion Cotillard to import microcredit in France. I took part in other initiatives, the creation of the Fondation Entreprendre with the Mullier family, etc. I've always been very passionate about that. Money is like energy. The more you share it, the more it tends to increase that energy. This is why in 2014 I read an article, and well, you can talk about it later on. Again, it's about journalism, but I created RAISE because I wanted to reconcile both worlds, the world of finance and the world of generosity. I wanted to make sure they could live hand in hand, and with Clara Guibert, this is how we created this Mouvement pour une économie bienveillante. I felt legitimate to launch this movement We don't want to be a think tank. We don't have to give lessons to anyone, but we managed some 1 billion euros that we raised over 4 years on the topic of sharing and kindness and mindfulness. Thank you.
Alors, Gonzague, vous parliez des journalistes.
Gonzague, you were talking about mindful journalists, and there's one just next to me. I don't know whether I need to introduce Frédéric Lopez. He's so well known here in France. He has a program called Voyage en Terre Inconnue, which is one of the most liked programs of the French people. Now, I haven't been taken hostage, so I was just someone with great complexes who wanted to see the world. And I started on a TV channel which had continuous news, non-stop news, and we were only spreading, bad news. So we weren't there to tell you that things, that the trains arrived on time. We only talked about bad news. And then I left because I had a problem with the president of the channel. And then I started a therapy afterwards when I left the channel, and I thought that I would stop this profession because it was too violent. So the therapist told me, when were you happy here? He said, well, I like, antiques, and so I like traveling, and he said, well, why don't you have a travel program? And I had a program, Open Star, and so then events took over. It seemed that there was a demand, because our idea with my team was we're not going to study people, we're not ethnologists, but we're going to share something with people for 15 or days or 3 weeks. So it started on France 5. People were congratulating me on the street for this program. And then with the director who did the March of the Emperor, and so we had 8 million people viewing our program. So things overtook us. So suddenly I was very disrupted that such a program was so successful, and I don't want to disappoint people. So I had friends I didn't know, and I said, all these people liked me, and they were busy hating someone else. So slowly, when somebody would come and talk to me, that they would ask me something. So, and I don't like to disappoint people. So I said, how can I satisfy people? So when people asked me for my phone number, I just gave it because I didn't want to disappoint people. And then the viewing, the ratings, is something that I didn't invent myself. And people always talk to you about the viewing figures. People think I'm hypocritical when I say viewing figures don't interest me. So this was too much, ultimately. And I was living in a world of stress. You always want to do well. That's what we do throughout life. You want to be good vis-à-vis your parents, etc. So I was at the very limit of burnout, as they say nowadays. You are receiving translation. So what I liked about mindfulness that was invented by you, so it was reduction of stress. So we were 3 people who attended. I wasn't attracted by other things because I didn't feel involved. So reduction of stress, that I realized realized in what state I was in. I followed this program for 8 weeks, and I discovered silence. And I realized that I always fled from silence and from loneliness, but I wasn't at ease with myself. So I discovered incredible things: silence, inner peace. I was always turned towards the outside world, and suddenly it was something incredible. It allowed me to make choices that were shocking for people, because many people were suggesting, proposing things, and I would say no, and people would say, "Why are you refusing? Why are you refusing?" And slowly I started listening to myself. I had forgotten myself for so many years, and I started to listen to myself, and I started realizing what my needs were. And even people around me, that is the most violent. People around you, and you say, okay, this is my best friend, and then you realize that you're not well with that person, because suddenly you realize what your feelings are, where suddenly these people whom I regarded as very demanding, well, they were chronic, dissatisfied people. So it was very revealing, and some people told me, well, we preferred you before, when I was suffering. Very close people would say that. And so it changed my life, and I didn't see the interest of convincing people, because when you have something that affects you, you want to talk about it. And when you are in a rational world here in France, and I have a friend, David Pujadas, and mentioned it on TV that I was involved in meditation, and I was so pleased to hear that about Jean-Gérard Bloch, and that there were scientific studies, because the reflex in France is, this is so strange. What is you are an extremist, you're an ayatollah, or what have you. But when you're attentive to yourself and you're into personal development, you're better connected to others. And when we live in urban areas, we are not connected with nature, with the animal world, etc. So I only want to say, and I said this to John, you become more human. That's what happens. And I'm very happy to testify to that. We're going to listen to you afterwards, and then we will see some images of your show and people that you have met when you filmed your programs. Amandine.
Vous aussi, vous êtes parti, donc je le disais.
You left for more than 20 years in very far-flung zones in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And the first step was the creation of your foundation, the Amandine Foundation. So in 2003, I went back to Afghanistan and I joined the United Nations. I became the director of civic education to explain what is democracy and human rights to the population and why it's so important to participate and vote. My job was to provide women empowerment and teach them how to become leaders and to stand for elections as senators or as members of parliament. I loved this job. I gave myself fully to that. And in a couple of years, I was burnt out. And after the presidential elections, 3 of my colleagues were in fact kidnapped just in front of my office. And the rumor was they wanted to kidnap me as well, and because we contributed to democracy. So the UN overnight sent me back to France, and when I went back to France, I was it looked as if I were pregnant, 4 or 5 months, but I wasn't. And people were congratulating me, and I said, I'm not pregnant. I went to see a doctor, and he said, you were so stressed that you're developing cancerous cells, and I will give you chemotherapy pills. And I was so scared, and I said, I'm 30 years old and I'm suffering from a stomach cancer. So I went to see an Ayurvedic doctor who treated me by massaging me with essential oils and plants. And he said, where did you go? I see bombings, I see kidnappings, I see assassinations. Where were you? And I said, I was in Afghanistan. And he said, I prohibit you to go there because you have an empathic nature. It means that you are like a sponge and you absorb all the negative energy of the country. So if you go back to Afghanistan today, you are going to suffer from this cancer. So learn to protect yourself. And I said, can I do that? And he said, learn to meditate. And as soon as he told me that, I got a message from the UN. You're going to attend the presidential elections, and it was in Banyan, which was a Buddhist area. So I went back to Dar es Salaam to see the Dalai Lama because I wanted to learn meditation. He played a very important role in my life. He told me, you cannot bring external peace if you do not have inner peace. And it was a shock because I said, who am I working for peace if I'm not at peace with myself? If I have post-traumatic stress, if I have this burnt out, I would be better off at home instead trying to help the Afghans. I'm a fraud. So I took my rucksack and I went round India in order to meet the spiritual masters who have inner peace. So I spent time with Dalai Lama and Karmapa. I had a Vipassana retreat. It changed my life because to stay silent for 10 days without speaking, talking, without looking at anybody, I met my monkey mind during that period. And then I toured India. I met Ahmad in Tamil Nadu, Mother Teresa, etc. And when I finished my tour and when I had finally found my inner peace, UN wrote to me saying, we need you in Kabul, come back. And I said to myself, do I want to go back? And I said, yes. Because I have a technique, I have meditation, as Marion said yesterday. I'm going to put into practice what I've learned. The security situation have changed. I had a bodyguard. I was completely surrounded by armed vehicles, and I was put in a guest house. And since I entered the guest house and I said, I can't stay here because I realized that it wasn't a good place. And thank God I did that because 6 months later, the Taliban arrived and they assassinated 6 of my colleagues whilst they were sleeping. Why am I saying that? Because my colleagues saw that I had changed. They said before when there were bombings outside, you reacted immediately, but now you don't even react. What happened? Well, I said, I meditate every day, I practice yoga every day, and they said, can you teach us? So I started a yoga meditation course in Kabul, and to my great surprise, Afghans came to see me and said, we too want to learn. So I would receive them on Friday because Friday was their day off. And the more I heard their stories, I said, the whole population is suffering from post-traumatic stress. And I went to see the Minister of Health. What are you doing for mental health? But this is a luxury for the Western world, that we have in the Western world. So this is why I created a foundation to offer yoga and meditation in prisons for women and for soldiers. This is inner peacekeeping that I've created for peacekeepers. So you have yoga, meditation, breathing exercise, emotional intelligence. There's a whole list in that program. And I created this program. Why? Because in 2014, do you want me to talk about it now or later? Well, I'll talk about it now. Because in 2014, I had to carry out monitoring in a voting station, and I was confronted with a kamikaze. He was going to blow himself up when the women would enter the polling station. And I was so frightened because when I entered that polling station and when I saw this man disguised as a woman, I knew it was a man because he was and I heard amygdala hijack, and I ran out when I heard that. My inner voice told me, this is the moment that you should put things in practice. John Kabat-Zinn, you're going to be proud of me. And show mindfulness. I went back to the kamikaze. I smiled at him. I looked at him in his eye. I looked at his eyes with love. That was the worst thing I could have done. And he smiled back. He was drugged. I saw hell in his eyes. But he removed the dynamite, and he went out. So I disarmed him. But I was traumatized, and for 1 month I didn't sleep at night, etc. So I left Afghanistan because this country did very bad things for me. So I went to see Ban Ki-moon, and I said, what are you doing about the mental health of your staff in situ? And if you are not doing anything, we could create a program. And this is why I created this program, Inner Peacekeeping. And it's not only addressed to the humanitarian staff, but what struck me when you told me about your story, you teach to Afghan women who are in refugee camps, isn't that? And Syrian women. This is a school in Kabul, which is called Torch of Light. We were accused of proselytism by Taliban because they said we were disseminating Buddhism and Hinduism, so I had to stop. This was the soldiers. Inner Peace Corps. So Inner Peace Corps, it's a play on words with the Peace Corps of United States. And here are the tools. I had forgotten about the slides, in fact. So these are the humanitarian staff who work with the Syrian refugees, and this program is proposed to Syrian women called Healing Women, because we feel that real women empowerment means that you have to treat women for their war injuries and help them to find again their human dignity, and in doing that they will find joy again. And we help them through meiotics, through their gift, like through theater, dance, song, and we give them a diving board so that they can reintegrate society.
I'm not in Marion Cotillard's head, but I'm sure she says to herself, if there's a film on Amandine's life, I want to play that part. Well, why not make a documentary about her? That's very inspiring. It's beautiful. I'm so moved. I'm even overwhelmed by what you said. I have to take the floor later on. I need to digest this. Let's turn to Guibert. He's going to talk about regenerative economy. Now, we're not so far away from what Amandine does, and I think you know each other very well. We do exchange a lot with Amandine. I'm a little bit in love with her, I must say. I say it publicly. We all are, says Frédéric. Amandine, does extremely important things. She heals people. Global ecology is the sum of individual ecology and inner activity. You have to develop that in our societal models. As I said at the end of my introduction, when I understood that the economic model I was taught was full of false beliefs, I understood that I should go out into the world and see by myself. I have to see how the world changes, what new pioneering solutions are thought of to make this a better world. I traveled across the world. I got in touch with entrepreneurs who innovate, who find new solutions to the major problems we're faced with. There's Bénédicte Magnier, a journalist, who wrote a book called A Million Silent Revolutions. She goes out to meet these people who try and show that everywhere in the world there are citizens, social entrepreneurs, well-informed companies that silently invent new solutions. And what I want to say here is that the solutions are out there. They exist. Now, the ideas never come out of your own minds, but the idea of a regenerative economy is important. It's too late to go for a sustainable economy only. You need to focus on a regenerative economy. This model, and that's good news, exists. Who's seen the film Demain? Raise your hands. Well, it's all about that. I wrote a book on regenerative economy. The book came out 2 years before Cyril's film, and it is based on it. A regenerative economy is relocalized, delocalized. In other words, production takes place where consumption takes place. That applies to energy, etc., and other sectors. I'm not going to go into a lecture, but food production, that has to do with permaculture, with agroecology. That's the first pillar of such a type of economy. Then it's a collaborative economy. You know, the open source system, Wiki, BlaBlaCar, and other exchanges. I'm not going to focus on Uber or Airbnb. These are new societal models where citizens exchange. These are platforms of collaborative economy. And when you talk of that second pillar, you talk about sharing. This leads me to the third pillar, functionality-based economy. What does that mean? Now, we were taught that one has to be the owner, but you don't have to be the owner of your fridge, for instance. All you need is to find a solution to the cooling problem you may have. And what does it mean if you're the owner or just the one who hires something, who rents something? So, after relocation, after functional economy, I focused on another aspect, the circular economy. Everything can be recycled and should be recycled. Waste on one side can be the raw material for another type of production. Now, what is wonderful is that it is a bio-inspired model. This is how nature works. Every living being is alive in a special place. Nature is functional. There's no ownership in nature. Nature recycles everything. It's not surprising. If you take the planet, 4.5 billion years. Now, Homo sapiens, if you take this in the framework of 24 hours, Homo sapiens appears at 23 hours, 59 minutes. So basically, in this world, mineral world, we know how to recycle waste. If I have 1 minute left, let me say one more thing. Those organizations that want to go along those lines, they need to change. Fundamentally, they need to change a lot of things. Firstly, and Gonzague will say a word about that, they have to develop a noble aim, a noble purpose, a raison d'être. The raison d'être is not to be the best in the world in your activity sector. You have to be the best for the world in your industry, in your sector. Secondly, these companies should develop other organizational models. Hierarchical structures are so passé, so old now. It's difficult to manage complexity. You shouldn't prevent people from expressing themselves. Of course, that's not the topic of this conference, but there are new organizational models based on the living matter. Thirdly, collective intelligence should be used more and more by companies, and there's so much in all these companies. Fourthly, we should develop another management model and call upon another type of intelligence. The people who run these companies have to have a certain IQ, but you also have to have an emotional quotient, a spiritual presence, and a systemic ability, i.e. to think holistically. Finally, for companies, it's important to change your performance measurements. Basing your measurements on economic aspects only, it's like a doctor telling you your blood pressure is 8/12. Well, so what? What about added values being destroyed? Well, what matters to me is in this process where I assisted a lot of company managers, I found out that you can't change an organization if you don't deeply change the awareness of the people who run these companies. No, it's the inner ecology that is the key to all, as Amandine said. To change companies and organizations, that's what you have to do. I went on spiritual retreats, experimental retreats with other managers to help them reconnect again and make them understand who they were via techniques such as martial arts, meditation, nature, and music, of course, which is the alpha and the omega. In your book, there's a wonderful chapter, Tomber plus haut, dedicated to sound and music, and it's wonderful to read. I advise you to do so. Could we now give the floor to Gonzague de Blignières?
Donc Gonzague, j'imagine que vous êtes...
Gonzague, you are 99% in agreement with Guibert, and you talk about mindful economy, and they talked about this on the cover of a well-known magazine here in France. I was not involved at all with meditation. It wasn't my thing, and I thought that people who meditate, who were navel-gazing, so not a sect, perhaps, but still. And I did a secular spiritual retreat with Guibert in Comer, and I was pushed to do that, and several amongst us went, and that when I discovered something that I try to rediscover every day. I wasn't alone. There was also Frédéric Lenoir with us. Yes, indeed, he was there too. But it's something that I came to belatedly. It doesn't replace my life, but it accompanies me in my life. I haven't turned it into something sacred, but it's a tool. So every time I go somewhere, for 30 seconds, I try to empty myself. The first time I saw Amandine, and I saw her stare, and I said to myself, she's done the same thing as I. Yes, there was something that went, there was something that came between us. So the article on Libération, it was May 2012, and I was dining with someone I knew, and we were in full French bashing. I love my country. It raised me, it looked after me, it treated me, it educated, and I love my country. And I come out of the restaurant, the first cover of Libération, young people of France, leave the country, the future is elsewhere. And I was so upset, and I said to my friend, we have to do something. I'm going to have something, I want to put in all newspapers, France loves you. France is the country that has, nurtured us. So I said to myself, I spent time to make money during the week and spend it in the afternoon, in the weekends, to help the disabled and people who go around the world on a boat, to help young people in underprivileged neighborhoods. And it's so horrible to go and ask for money here and there. But couldn't we have an economy that more you earn, the more you give, and you want to make a lot of money, money because you want to succeed. And that is the idea of RAISE. It's 1 billion euros that we found, we were in 1 year. We invest in startups, in companies, in social actions, but it's the large companies who, and we said, okay, we're going to do something which is focused on the citizen, which is profitable, and which is mindful. And they all said yes, and they put money in this joint stock company. So we said, you're not going to be generous, the team is going to be generous. We have 30 people, we have complete equality, men and women, and we're called the Association of RAISE Sherpa, and it is the largest company for investors in France. Now, we're not going to bring down your profitability to be generous, but we are going to give in your stead. And the motivation of our team, who we invest in startups and companies, is to make the greatest amount of money to feed our families, of course, but also to feed others. And since companies in silos no longer exist, the world today, walls are going down. I hope a lot of walls are going to come down, especially those that have been built recently. But the startups and large corporations are interested, and we were going to link corporations with startups, because usually they were quite diffident. Now, over 4 years, we met with 3,000 startups, and what struck us, the people who create their company, they do it so that we can live together in a better way. I remember a girl, Marie Schnegans. You know Marie Schnegans. She's 21 years old. She went to the UBS as a trainee, and she doesn't know anybody there. She goes to the canteen, and she said, there's no app that will help me. So she created an app, Never Eat Alone, so that people can meet. It's so simple. It's so simple. What we did with RAISE is that we presented new ideas to all the large corporations in France. So at the outset, it wasn't that we wanted to create a product that's going to earn a lot of money, So that is what's behind RAISE. So we want people to talk to one another. That's what we want to do in RAISE, share our success, even before we are successful. So we are mindful. I'm a bit ashamed to talk about what we do, but because you are all stars here. But this is the only way to change the world, because I want to change the world. I want to change this economy, which accumulates wealth and which is really ill. So whoever we meet, a person in his or her company, we see whether they are mindful.
Gonzague, just to finish this teaching, we have, yes, started a manifesto, which is a movement for mindful economies. So I'm just come to make you all sign this charter on the internet. Otherwise, I'm going to be told off once I come back to my office. What is this movement, the MBA? Well, in fact, the cumulative capitalism doesn't exist anymore. Populism is rising in all the countries. The richness, health, wealth is increasing in ever diminishing numbers of people. We can go on the central square here to say, by shouting out, we've got to share, 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 but it doesn't work. In order to share, you've got to have something to share. So we must not stop opposing profitability and mindfulness and sharing. The classical world of capitalism, we can't change it. It's so enormous. And philanthropism and other philosophies, there's a systematic link, automatic link to be set up between those worlds. those two worlds. So the principle of the world for a well-meaning economy is you have to do three things. If you're a business, you have to sign the charter. That means I believe in it, and this is a movement, and I'll tell you later on why we've done it. So you give systematically a part of your sources, whether it's your benefits, your profits, or resources in human time, systematically. If you're a startup, you can give a little bit of time. If you've then successful, you can give a little bit of your benefits, profits. For an association which is within your own system, within your own domain, within your own activity sector, within your own job, and then engage all of your salaried, your wage earners, because it's their business. Well, what we created 20 years ago, a foundation for the ecology, and each business was starting the local, and it's 12 million euros that we've invested in that, and it's systematically, it's 20% every single time. So when you look at those shops of Nature and Découverte, you can see that they are more ethical. Danone also accepted to give 1 day of profits for fighting undernutrition in the world. So I think we have to work it in a very systematic way. That's how it's going to work. And those two worlds then will be able to be reconciled. We've started that just a few weeks ago with our people. We have more than 2,000 people who signed, known people and unknown people, but also I want to have Marion, Frédéric, Guibert, and Aurélie. Amandine, please. If she could be an Angélique here in the room, she could also sign. She's welcome. And our major idea is to post up on internet some examples, and we want to go to the G7 in Biarritz next year to with an initiative, private initiative, saying that if we can continue the cumulative economy as it's not going to be working, we have to create this new caring economy. And my dream is that in 20, 30 years' time, all firms will give 20 or 30% of those firms will work in such a way and systematically share part of their profits for associations in their own ecosystems. It's virtuous. I'm more justified because we've created it and we can prove you that it works. And in order to make mindful economy, you've got to have guts really to do it, because this is not business is not reputed to be very sharing and mindful, but it works very well. So please, 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 please sign on www.meb.com.
Bon alors Frédéric, vous allez signer?
Frédéric, are you going to sign? Well, of course. Yes. So we've seen the humanitarian economy. You're going to talk to us about the media. I suppose you're the person to talk about media because it's linked to the meaning of things. So you've done so many things. I'm thinking of the cinema and the films that you've done. Why did you go to and turn to TV? First of all, because I love the others, and you can't invent that. And when I was talking with the news, with information, we were only looking at people who were in these depressing states, and it was difficult to push a microphone underneath their nose and then disappear once I have my sound bites. And it wasn't for me, and I thought, well, maybe there was a scare that the world is only reduced to what we look at in the news and show at the news. Journalists are sincere, and the press bosses are really of good faith. We're all going to agree that there is a certain distortion of reality, but I'm not here for conspirations. I don't think that anybody is plotting against anything else. It's just that we're all animals talking together on the same planet, living together, and we're all interdependent. The media are talking about politics. Politics is dependent on the economy, and so on and so on and so on. I'd like to talk to you about the individual. I'll start because as a non-expert, I have just my experience to tell you, and as a sum total of my experience, I had the extraordinary luck to go and see people in worlds that were not ours. 5 or 10 years ago, it was 10% of the world population. Now it's shrinking down to 3%. 20% of the population. They live in an organization which is different, economy which is different from us. And the people I saw didn't have any money because it was of no use, because they were in a desert, in a polar circle, or in the Andes, very high up, so they had no money. And my book, Sapiens, History of Humanity, is fascinating for me because there are still human beings living like that, but there's a very, very small percentage of them. So I went to see those people with a wonderful team, with artists. Well, Marion, I didn't have it in time, but she's going to go and have a look at those people really at the far end of the world, and then people could see that on TV. I'll just show you a few tasters of these images and a few sentences to try and show you what people told me, that they are not indicated and is recognized and acknowledged by so many experts as well.
Le soleil se lève, alors on le remercie de nous donner la vie. Dans un moment comme celui-là, je me dis qu'on vit sur la même planète. En dehors des langues et des religions, on est tout simplement des humains sur cette terre.
C'est époustouflant.
Nous sommes des êtres humains, même si nous nous couvrons d'ocre rouge. Et si vous prenez de l'eau et que vous lavez l'ocre, peut-être que je suis même plus blanche que vous.
On vous remercie d'être venu jusqu'ici pour faire notre connaissance. On remercie aussi les dieux de nous avoir donné une chance de vous rencontrer.
En souriant, les journées et la vie en général sont plus faciles. Donc il faut toujours essayer de garder le sourire pour que la vie soit la plus belle possible.
J'accouche seule. Et j'appelle les autres seulement après avoir coupé le cordon.
Toute seule, toute seule.
Oui. Ah, bravo.
Qu'est-ce qu'il est joli.
Tu sais, la vie, c'est comme une porte fermée et on a besoin de la clé pour l'ouvrir. La clé, c'est l'éducation. Je veux que mes enfants soient capables d'ouvrir cette porte pour ne pas rester bloqués derrière, comme je l'étais avant. En ville, c'est plutôt chacun pour soi. Tu peux pas vraiment compter sur les autres en cas de besoin. À la campagne, on vit mieux grâce à l'AINI, la réciprocité. Tu m'aides aujourd'hui, je t'aiderai demain. C'est comme ça que ça marche.
Avant, nous, les Mentawai, nous pensions que le monde était petit. Maintenant, nous savons qu'il est très grand. Nous savons qu'il y a le progrès. Nous faisons de notre mieux pour garder notre mode de vie. Je n'ai pas la solution. Mais peut-être que pour nous défendre, le reste du monde peut nous aider.
Et merci pour tout.
Merci.
Wow.
Alors c'est 3 minutes.
So those are 3 minutes that are a summary of 12 years of my life. And the doctor is from Strasbourg. Olivier Briot is here, and he's here with his daughter, and I'd like you to applaud him.
Parce qu'en fait, il vient en cas de...
He comes sometimes, and it's reassuring for the artist who comes along with me, because they know that there's a doctor on site with me, and also it's useful for the populations on site. He looks after people, and we'll talk about his own caring society to look after the carers who are looking after us. This is very moving. All those people, I used a lot of time of translation for some people, and César Bouca told me, this is cruel, you talk to us about wonderful people, and then we love them, and then we have to leave them forever, and that's very cruel, and I'm very sorry for that. So, I don't know what they have to teach to us. We want to change the world. We want to live in a new world. It's very interesting because you reminded us just now that sapiens came not very long ago on this planet. And 200 years ago, we've started making a lot of errors for the planet, but I'm still optimistic. And when you listen to our ancestors, those populations, they talk to us about mind-caring, mindful economies. Chien, I remember, it was in Vietnam. He was talking about Lolo language and not the Vietnamese language. He comes from China. It's like the Asterix village in France. They talk about a language that is not talked outside of the village. And Frédéric Michelin, who was my guest, he said, well, he didn't stop. Can I say some swear words? And I said, oh, shit, they're always smiling and they've got so many problems. And I said, first of all, there's no irony, and you're coming from another planet. And say, well, yes, we have a lot less worries than them. Why? Because we don't do any translation, any adaptations. We show it directly as it is, and we have so many more things than they do, and they are much more happy than us. And you're saying, I'm not just smiling to yourself, and it's absolutely hallucinating to talk about all this, to see what we've been living through. I don't smile at you, but I smile at everybody, because that's the way that people behave better towards me. That's the way he was educated. And the inventor of positive psychology know that smile is a key to a door, that it can treat well so many people. If Jen didn't go to the school, he went to the first courses at the age of 30, and in universities they are saying exactly the same things. And come back, I met him in Taiga. He went to school until he was 14, and he explains the best times in his whole life. He looks at me and he takes me on the collar, really. He grabs me and he says, aren't we here beautiful? Isn't it wonderful? Well, he doesn't know John Kabat-Zinn, but he says, well, he's just discovering the same world. And we were in the snow, we had a big fire, we had the wolves chased off, so we were very happy about it. And he said, aren't we going? This is happiness, this is happiness. What is it about happiness? Is there, that's what you've got. I don't know if he had this word in his, he has reindeers, and he follows his reindeers day after day, and that's happiness for him. And the move is very stressful, we're being told, in the Western world, and he moves every week. He's a nomad in the snow, so it's very perturbing to see him, and I was very overworked. I didn't go 1 month with my teapot in the Tunga. I went for 4 days. You look at the permanent lights, and the light is changing my life. And I also went to Dolma in the Himalayas at 5,000 meters of altitude, where she's taking the barley for the whole river. And I identified myself to have to manage my barley for the next month, and say, oh, well, we mustn't eat it in one month. You've got to make it work for 7 months. And you've got to really, well, what do you do when nothing is left? Well, I'll ask my neighbor, and he'll give me. So she develops the concept of solidarity. She lives with it. It's very natural. Well, I'll just ask my neighbor if I run out. And then other things I would like to say is Barkai. Barkai, there are two in the desert. When they said, wow, there's absolutely nobody. When you say it's a desert, really, but it really was. There's absolutely nobody here. And the guy says, I'm never feeling alone. Well, is it a hidden camera or what's going on? I never feel alone here. And I say, well, who is it then? Who is the guy? And the interpreter says, it's my friend, my brother. There's a problem of translation. No, it's your brother? No, he's my friend brother. It's a new concept, unbelievable. We are in the Chad, in the desert, and he said, well, we were chosen at birth, and it's like a rearranged marriage at birth, and together of us, we are brothers and chosen brothers. I can count on him for my life, and vice versa. If I marry and I don't ask him for a camel, he's going to be offended. So we are in a total different situation. I resent you if you don't ask me for my help. So you see that all those people from the outer reaches of the world have a lot of lessons to give to us, to be solidarity and to have respect for the memory of our world, of our humanity. I was very lucky to be able to capture that on film. Otherwise, people are not going to be able to believe me. Of course, I'm not going to say that everything is absolutely wonderful in all of the traditional societies, but really there are a few things that we have to keep and we have to find again, because the needs, indeed, they are going to be very numerous in this room, and everything I've heard in this room make me very optimistic. Everything is absolutely mad in this transition period that we have in this world. Some people are reacting and resisting it, and we see that why in this society we haven't got yet this mindfulness. Yes, indeed, in our work we would like to see more TV programs about this, transmitting those values. Why is it blocked? How can we convince the broadcasters? I hope that tomorrow morning we'll give an answer. We'll talk about science tomorrow, and we'd like to be talking about the human brain. That's where it starts. Why is our brain more interested by negative news than others? There's been some news trying to give good news, and it doesn't work. It's not popular. So why? We know that police people on motorways, when there's an accident, there's a roadblock, curiosity slowing down on the other side of the motorway. People are interested in what's going wrong. Why are we attracted by anything that goes wrong? I'm very much in anger here. I mustn't hate at the journalists, or they are of goodwill, most of them, but what is really bother for us, for the chains of newscasters, there's this training that is given. 23 years I was in the training. So you were not here to tell you that a train arrived at the right time. Somebody is waking up at 3 o'clock to drive a TGV, a high-speed train, and manages to bring it to the right time. And there are more trains that are arriving right on time than others. We're talking about the French railway, of course, and other railways. And just on this example is a distortion of reality, enormous distortion. And this is applied to all 100% of all subjects, news subjects. And it's mad, isn't it? And there's a guy in Sweden, I've forgotten his name. I would have loved to meet him, but he's dead now. He's got a video on internet, and he's hitting on the objective data, and he's on info newscaster in Sweden. And when the video starts on internet, there's a guy who tells you, oh, stop making us believe that the world is going bad. It's getting better and better and better. And he explains, well, it was better yesterday. Well, that's where I was, and now things are better now. But we are very aware that there's a lot of problems that we find unbearable. And I think, well, that's very good. And every time that we're interested in a problem, then we find a solution. A solution comes along, and this optimistic. But this is not the general sensation. Everybody feels feels that everything is absolutely catastrophic, everything is losing out, and everybody is thinking that. Well, why? But well, let's stop it, because you talked about Liberia. There was a time when there was a terror attack, and I don't know the video's date. They said the power of women is incredibly more powerful in this country in Africa than in others, and there's all sorts of things, of positive things. And he said, it's like you did a portrait of myself and you only did a filming of my soles of my shoes and nothing. Well, yeah, of course, it's not glamorous to just have the soles of the feet. The world of news that wants to be an echo of the reality, they are goodwill, but they only film the soles of the feet of the world. And it's very serious, because if you only film the ugliness of the world, that means that you lose your hope and you don't want to be moving anymore. You're immobile and shackled. And this exists, and it's a phenomenon. I haven't got any solutions. What is more complicated, if you're looking at a TV program, every evening you're going to see it at 8:30 p.m. There's 25 channels in France. I don't know how many in the US. There's magazines, there's programs, there's series, there's soaps, etc. What's the word that comes more and more in the titles? Here we're talking about fiction films. Fiction is not reality. Well, it's the crime thrillers, or the accused, etc. When you look at the history of humanity, there are 7 billion inhabitants on this planet, and we have about 550,000 who are killed per year on this planet. But on the 7 billion, there's 550,000 people who decide to commit suicide. So statistically, you have just the same chance of being killed by your own will than committing suicide than being killed by other people. So I don't know why neurologists have got to explain to us why we're so interested in always negative news. There's fiction. There are some platforms which are giving always all-round fiction programs, saying, well, every day I see all sorts of leaders and trailers for fiction news. And there's very interesting things. What is a beautiful story? Something that is going to move us in 2 hours' time? What is the object of the desire of the character, and what are the different characters? If there's no conflict, there's no story. That's the story for fiction. And when the moment in which we're living is very anxious, then we always go through thrillers and the films of killings. I was extremely interested by Marion. I was very much impressed by her path as an actress in America. I'd like you to applaud her, because we haven't got so many actresses of this quality to really stretch out to all those worlds between the Oscar world and Strasbourg and Sam. Really, it's really spreading it very, very wide. And really, it's absolutely wonderful when you see the images which are spending a lot of time in our life. We have the news. We are being told that's reality. When you listen to internet, you do GT, TF1, Jaws, you know, it was a parody of Jaws, the film, and to frighten you off. And it's supposed to be reality, and very often you see people suffering, so it's very sad. And then you have publicity when people want to smile at you because they have something to sell to you. It's something that's supposed to make us happy, a new toothbrush, whatever. And then there's fiction. If there's nothing happening, then it's not going to be interesting us, but it's going to be something that is horrible happening to attract us. If we don't show that, then we won't be so many afraid if we just stop looking at all this nastiness.
Alors, on vous écouterait tous pendant des heures.
I'm sure we could listen to you all for hours. Personally, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentations. They're so genuine. You've taught us so much. Before I hand over to Marion Cotillard, I would like to give you the floor, the audience, 1 or 2 questions. We have microphones on the right and the left side of the room. Please take a microphone if you want to raise a question.
Aucune question?
Allez.
No questions? Go ahead. They're all practicing meditation. There is someone over there. It's not a question, it's a little gift I have about the word bienveillance, or caring, kindness, mindfulness, loving kindness in English. In French we say compassion. And this word bienveillance, which has crept up in our vocabulary, is a wonderful word. It includes goodness and caring kindness. In other words, the concept of awakening, wakefulness. This is what is so nice about the French language. It is a Lama who said that to me. It's not something I discovered by myself. It's a Lama who told me that. So the word bienveillance in itself is a gift. Thank you for sharing this with us.
En anglais, le mot bienveillance.
In English, you would say benevolence. Benevolence would be the best translation for bienveillance. Benevolence. I think it is so close to the French word that we really have to, invent that word. Another question, please? Okay. I will. My heart is beating very fast. The meditation tool is such a wonderful tool. I got trained to teach it to children and teenagers. I was trained in the US. I came back with my tools. I wanted to contact a school in my village here in France, and I was told, what is this all about? I therefore wonder whether we shouldn't step back a little bit. We have a lot of prejudice sometimes. I dropped everything and I directed a documentary in the US on children and meditation. I wanted to share this with you. I wanted to show you the faces of these children. I don't want to go into figures and scientific issues. Other people do that better than I do. I wanted to show you these children's faces. So this film is ready. It can go out in the world. There are other people present here who would probably share this idea. This is something we should teach children early on. Naturally, that is what you're like when you're born, yet you lose that aspect along the years. So it's something that I would like to teach to all children in the world. You do your work in your sector, but this is something we all need. All of us need that. Now, this benevolent society also starts with education and maybe meditation for children. Dominique Butet is in the room. Thank you for this wonderful work done in public schools in that respect.
Marion. Alors.
Marion, over to you. I would like to know what you think. That was wonderful, wasn't it? We said 2 questions. We can take a third one quickly. Hello, thank you very much for your interventions. I love this concept of benevolence, but sometimes you feel there is aggression in your personal life, in the geopolitical world. There are some forms of aggression and attacks. So how can you find the right balance here to defend yourself in the face of such attacks? I'll share a secret with you. Every day I meditate, and I use 3 words: benevolence, discerning attitude, and full power. I think we're all more powerful than we think we are, even individually. Discernment, understanding what the world is all about, that also enables you to move ahead. In the word benevolence, you have good and volition. So you have to care for everybody's well-being. As early as in the morning, you should start being a smiley person. I move about on my scooter. I'm often attacked by people. Rather than get head up, I smile at people. And when you have a smile on your face all day long, well, you end up having a much better day. Marion, what moved you here? What can you capture? What did you capture from these presentations? First, I'd like to thank you all for your very inspiring interventions. It was amazing to listen to you. You have wonderful souls, and what you do is extremely useful to our society. You make a lot possible. Well, it's quite funny how people chime, how things chime with each other. This young lady talked about a documentary on children and medication. Maybe we could meet later on bilaterally. I don't know where you're sitting in the room, but I would like to meet you. Now, what Frédéric showed us, his reports, one of the men you met said education is the key to everything. Well, we all went to school. For me, it was a very painful moment. Going to school was difficult. You wondered why our brain is more attracted by negative than positive things. Well, I think that when you're born, your brain is not automatically attracted by what is negative. We're conditioned by our society, which means that at the end of the day, there's like a vampire in us. There's like this eagerness to give rise to something inside. Maybe this is reassuring because, yes, we are surrounded by bad news, bad things. We're used to that in a way. And I believe that we should very much look after our children, care for our children, to make sure that this society we long for comes into being. What you are doing is wonderful. It should be shared as much as possible, and from an early age onwards. Today, I'm the mother of 2 children, and in Paris, I had a hard time finding the school I liked, and I had to go for the one I hated less. It's very difficult to find the right school for your children. I wondered, I'm sorry about this, I wondered which school would be the best to let my children be free, not be influenced by what we create artificially, to which we cling, because sometimes we're afraid of being free. So what I've heard, what you told us, made me think that it would be wonderful if this room was twice as big and filled with children, teenagers who'd be inspired by you, by your backgrounds, by what you've done in life, by this eagerness to be kind and caring, by this wish to pass on this benevolence, all these things you want to share when you're a child. My daughter wants nothing more than be with others. When I'm outside, she runs after other children, and my son does that too. And then you become a teenager and an adult, and you lose some of this, these natural instincts. I'm pleased to be here with you because I can find here wonderful people, and what they said was so moving. That's why I'm in this state. I'm overwhelmed by what you told us. You covered such a large range of topics. We need to care for our children, make sure that they are passionate about what they would like to do, but that shouldn't lead to burnout. But that was wonderful for you too, who had a burnout, because you changed your life radically. So that is what stays in my mind following your interventions. I think we should give everyone more freedom, more benevolence, particularly in schools. You all said the same thing. You have to look inside yourself and understand that your person is the most important project in your life. I met a lot of people who were in favor of ecology, defending ecology, but at some point I couldn't recognize what I found so wonderful in these people. Although I admire their work, some people fend for wonderful causes, but at the same time, when they go back home, I can see that they're on the verge of a burnout. If you want to disseminate this information, if you want others to fight on your side, there are certain things you need to do. Little by little, I moved away from some people and some topics. Maxime de Rostolan is one of my friends. He is the creator of Ferme d'Avenir. He does wonderful things. When we talk to each other, he says, we have to legislate, we have to create laws, the state has to do this and that, force people to do this and that. And I often say to him, yes, let's do whatever you want to do, let's create laws, but if we don't care for people's soul, if you continue forcing people to do things that are good for the planet, if we are polluted inside of us, then nothing will be sustainable, nothing will last forever. So yes, you want to save this planet. There's this vital need to save what surrounds us. We know we are short of time, but first we should touch base with ourselves, look inside and see what matters most. I was working with Greenpeace and Pierre. You have to look at yourself. You want to be free. You want to live in a free world. I do too. I want us to be able to look at each other. I want us to share our fears. I want to make sure these fears don't make us move apart. I am all in favor of benevolence. I want to share all this, but I want to share that with children, with the younger generation. We can fix our mind and body. We can repair a certain number of things in our body and mind. But when you're talking about what Pierre Rabhi, the cause Pierre Rabhi defends, I think that you need sometimes to get rid of some mental pollution. You need silence, you need to be quiet. And the more I do that, the less my children will have to do that. I hope you understand that, what I mean. I find it difficult to find the right words to say what I want to say. We want to help. We need to clean our act to make sure that the next generation doesn't have to do it for us. We have to prepare a brighter future for them, get rid of this toxic waste that surrounds us, all these negative thoughts. So once again, thank you so much for these wonderful interventions. I was so moved. Thank you, Marion.